Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with your host and show creator, Mike Graham.
We're rolling. Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's Friday night and there's only one place to be, 7 o'clock every single Friday. It is the best show in town and we have got plenty of plankery to get on with. And we've got a new discovery, which we've learned last week actually, which is that we quite like the idea of having four little screens, four little squares of the three other guests plus me, because it actually works better than having somebody in the studio with me. And I tried to make sure that we didn't have anyone in the studio this week with me, but unfortunately I failed in that particular endeavour because Donald Macleod of the Clan Macleod is here.
Hello, Harush.
He's already drinking, right? Which he's not supposed to be doing. We've also got Annunziata Rees-Mogg, who of course famously was one of the first ever panellists on Plank of the Week. She was on the very first show 6 years ago, right?
Wow.
Her and Russell Quirk. And Jasmine Birtles joins us once more. Thank you very much indeed. Nice to see you girls. I'm allowed to call you girls. Hopefully that's not, in any way upsetting to anyone. Also, what I can say is that we've made Donald wear a heron tie. I've got one here. These are ties that have been sent in by
I think they're cranes.
Our loyal viewers. I know you can't tell the difference though.
Yeah, neither can you.
I can actually. Herons have got an S-shaped neck.
Yeah, well, so have you. Has that got an S-shaped neck? Yes, it's got an S-shaped neck. Yes, it has. No. That is an S-shaped neck.
It said it on the box. It's a crane.
What? It was packaged by Germans, for God's sake. You know, what do you expect?
Anyway, listen. So these ties have been sent in very kindly. So we made him wear one. I've got one on. Are you girls wearing anything heron-related, or were you not given the memo?
No, we weren't given the memo, but I have got flowers and butterflies behind me, so you can have cranes, in the flowers and butterflies. You have, but
I've got some birds.
There are some birds there. Yeah, no, that's good actually. That's all right. We'll accept that, I think, because particularly for Donald, who doesn't know the difference between one bird and another.
Neither does Mike, it seems.
But the reason for the herons in the studio is that basically when I was in my what do they call it, between engagements. Resting, when I was waiting to find out whether Phil was going to fire me or not. Right? I came out of my house in London and I lived down by the River Thames near Canary Wharf. And as I was walking out through this little sort of private road gate thing, I noticed there was this giant bird on the top of the railings. It was a heron just sitting there. And it was about sort of, this big, huge thing. And I'd never seen it before. And I thought, that's a bit weird. And then I was talking to a friend of mine, and she said to me, that's quite a sort of it's a good luck signal, which means that something good's going to happen. And so I then sort of delved into it a little bit, and I looked up herons in sort of popular folklore. And in lots of parts of the world, a heron is a signifier of new beginnings and, brand new starts and all sorts of, good omens, right? The Native Americans consider it to be a bird of great wisdom and blah, blah. And so I started getting quite into it. So I started telling these stories when we started this show. And so as a result, we've got these herons all over the place. People have sent us in heron sculptures, heron paintings, heron ties. So that's why we're a bit obsessed with herons. And it drives some people mad. But, it's kind of nice. And then somebody said to me, perhaps your mother, who passed away aged 99 about almost a year and a half ago, perhaps your mother sent the heron to you as a sign of good luck. So I kind of embraced it all and thought, I'm not particularly hippy-dippy about most things, but I just thought it was a rather nice little story.
Lovely.
I like that.
I like it. Yeah, so, anyway, here we are. We've got 10 planks to get through. I think we should allow Annunziata, as the first guest ever on Plank of the Week, to kick us off. And you've got an MP who I'd never heard of, actually, until today, called Catherine West. Let's have a quick look at
Because what I am hoping to induce is reflection upon the sheer importance of the institution about which we are to take this important decision.
We are now on a speaking limit of 6 minutes, and I call Catherine West.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and I hope to be a little more brief and less pompous than previous speakers. Madam Deputy Speaker, I am indebted to the many who serve in day-to-day court work in the Wood Green courts and in other parts of the London circuit, and I want to thank them for their hard work in this rather thankless legal work.
Okay. So, Annunziata, tell us who this woman is and why she's so preposterous.
So there was the debate in the House of Commons about whether to scrap juries, and quite possibly one of the best speeches ever on the House of Commons, certainly that I have ever watched, was given. And at the end of it, the Speaker said, we're now on 6-minute rule. No one can talk for more than 6 minutes. And we're going over to Catherine West, who said, well, scruffle, I'm looking at paper. That was very pompous.
Right.
In the most pathetic, snide way. She then went on, as you'll see, to read badly, not even read well, a bit of script. And I think she just typifies what is wrong with our elected representatives and why so many of them are planks.
Yeah.
That she was an Australian, she went to university, became a social worker, moved to the UK, worked for David Lammy, became, as a caseworker, became an Islington Council councillor, became an MP for Hornsey. She's been in Parliament for 11 years. She still can't give a speech or ask a question without reading it, and she only ever does the government's bidding. What is the point of people like her in a democracy?
Exactly right. And she was having a go at Geoffrey Cox, one of the fairly well-versed legal minds in the country, never mind in Parliament, you know, who was, I think, former Attorney General, who was making a very valid point about jury trials.
Cox's speech was an absolute tour de force. It was delivered absolutely flawlessly, fluently, with passion, intellect, argument, principles at its core. And she came across as just the exact antithesis, someone who didn't know what they wanted to say or why they wanted to say it and couldn't say it well.
Right, exactly right. Have you ever heard of this woman, Jasmine? Because I'd literally never heard of her. I had to look her up to see where she came from, and she sounded Antipodean, so I had checked it out. And it might not surprise you to know that, of course, she went to private school in Australia, because obviously all socialists have to go to private school in order to find out what they should detest, right?
Yes, absolutely right. That's exactly right. But this is the case with so many of our MPs, as you say. I mean, you can't blame them, but Labour had so many wins that you had basically your next door neighbour going, oh, go on, I'll stand. And then they just got in. So you've got all these sort of random people who, as you say, have got backgrounds as social workers, who knows, road cleaners, whatever. And actually, no, road cleaners would have been good. But social workers, no, we've got too many in the Labour Party now, people who don't have any economic sense. They are essentially economically illiterate, and that's the problem that we've got, particularly with the backbenchers that you've never heard of and probably never will after the end of this term, whenever that happens, which I keep saying is going to be much earlier than 2029.
I know. Well, we've obviously got quite a few members of the Cabinet and possibly even the Prime Minister to nominate a little bit later on, so we'll get stuck into Labour, generally speaking. But it is going terribly badly for them, Annunziata, isn't it? I mean, I don't remember a government worse than this.
No, absolutely. And so quickly. I mean, it happened within 2 weeks.
It did.
And I think one of their big problems is this sort of chumocracy, that Catherine West worked for David Lammy, but half the cabinet are married to other MPs or sisters or daughters and sons, and there's this feeling there's a cabal, and I have a nasty feeling going back, a lot of that stems from Peter Mandelson. Orchestrating who got what plum seats when. And Catherine West doesn't have the excuse of having been parachuted in unexpectedly at the last election. She's been in since 2015. That these are people who they want in their party. But why do they want them? Because what are they adding?
Yeah, exactly right. It is an absolute shambles.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, with when you have such a huge majority, they can never be really held to account because they can just become contemptuous of everybody, everything. It doesn't matter how learned you are on any subject. They're right, they're going to be right, and they get away with it. It's the same in Scotland with the SNP. They're contemptuous of those around them, and indeed the people they represent. So when you go to them with a problem,
Right. Well, because also they now know.
As you were mentioning, you're going to talk about maybe small business or something like that. I find that all the time. You go along, what are you worried about?
Right.
You know, where you go?
Well,
you're
because
talking
they see
rubbish,
people
you know?
like you as an entrepreneur, so you must be wealthy, you must have plenty of money.
Yeah.
So what you're whining about,
and you don't care about your staff,
just
and
pay
you
more
don't do
tax.
all that nonsense.
Right.
None of them have worked in business.
Yeah.
They have all come from the public sector. And that's a real worry, because if you don't understand the income generators of the country, you don't understand how to run the economy from the very beginning. And they're proving it by how badly wrong they're getting it.
They really are. Speaking of which, of course, you're about to attack probably the most successful man in the history of commerce in the world, right? Very brave of you to do so. You're going to have a go at Elon Musk.
Well, yeah. I mean, he could maybe fly rockets, or maybe want to up to the moon, into the stars, populate Mars. He's worth $600 billion. He's $600 billion.
Doesn't sound like much of a plank to me.
And you know, as I say, rockets. Tesla motor cars. I mean, tunnels under LA. The man is a genius. Don't get me wrong there. I absolutely support him, except for one thing. See, when your computer's hacked and Twitter account goes down, he's got a bunch of numpties working for him. They don't care. They just let you work yourself into a frenzy.
Are you speaking from personal experience?
Yes, very much so. I got hacked on Saturday there, and email after me, form filling. Oh yeah, we're going to look at this, and then they tell you, no, your account's active. It's okay. But it's not active by me. It's somebody else that's kidding on. It's me. It's not me. What is wrong with you? And then you just calm down, and then you try that process again. I've tried it 4 times, and then the last one, this ticket is still getting looked at. Right. What is wrong with you? You've got the best minds on the planet working for them, and they can't fix a bloody one account.
So are you saying you can't log into it, or you can't
No, I can't log into my account, and they say it's active because the hacker has got control of my account.
So if I look up your Twitter account now, for example, right?
On you go.
And let's see what it says, because obviously I'm now concerned that they might try and inveigle their way into my
just don't press
system.
a button called click vote on a private message, because that immediately starts the whole.
So Donald Macleod says here, clubs, venues, campsite owner, impresario, columnist, chair, NRS events, Barrowlands Hall of Fame. There's quite a lot going on there. And then this says, I used to be crypto skeptic. But everything had changed when I met Coach Felicia, an expert crypto trader who showed me the ropes. I'm excited to share that I've just received my 4th payout of £60,000, which was credited directly to my bank account in just 2 hours. And then there's a picture of your bank account with 64,000 quid in it. And then there's nothing for 5 days.
Yeah, that's it. That's the last post. You say it's pretty obvious. I've been active every day, posting 3, 4, 5 times a day, and then Saturday, that's it, dead.
But nobody can actually.
And the amount of people are asking me, when did you start selling crypto? For God's sake, I'm not selling crypto. What is wrong with you? It's make me ill.
Right. Okay. So, Jasmine, you know a thing or two about recovering accounts and sort of dealing with banks and stuff like that. What do you suggest Donald should do?
Well, I think what he's doing right now is a very good thing, frankly. He's making a fuss in the media, and that's what I find, that's my red button. I'm writing to people, you try to write to the customer disservice section, you try and write to the CEO. Writing to the CEO is a good one, but then for me, if even writing to the CEO doesn't help, then it's press. Actually, quite often, even before CEO, I get in touch with the press office and go, very disappointed. I'm just writing an article for whatever, national newspaper. Can you tell me why this is happening? And then suddenly it's sorted out. So I think what Donald is doing is very good.
Well, can you put a bit in your paper then about it, because it's doing my head in. It's because apparently it's not. Since then, Charlotte, who works here, she knows a lot of people that have equally been caught out by this same scam, and they can't get access to their X account, and yet it's about triple X account. It's absolutely disgraceful, because they do not respond It's obviously a robot that's looking at it, and they say, "Oh, it's active." There's no people going, "Wait a minute, I'll just press what you did there. I'll have a wee look at your account, and you can see that I haven't posted in."
It's not normal.
It's not normal. It's not. So plank of the week, plank of every week until he gets this fixed must be Elon Musk, because at the end of the day, as I say, he can send people off to Mars. He can. Tunnels underground, all the geniuses, and you can't fix a bloody Twitter account, or X account.
It's AI. It's robots. The more we have AI, the more we have robots, the more we have this technology, the worse it's going to get. Because, as you say, there's no common sense. AI doesn't have common sense. It can only do pattern recognition. And this is something that's really getting to me now, is QR codes. I am sick of going into restaurants or cafes, and you go ask for the menu, and it's a QR code.
Right.
And actually, QR codes potentially can have malware in them.
Well, I'm asked to download please, with your another device, click take a photograph of this QR code, so that then opens up your account. It doesn't. It just takes you right back to the beginning of the process. Please redo your password.
The other problem as well with QR codes is that, and a lot of this is going on particularly in car parks and places like that in London, is the scammers will go in and tape over the old QR code and put a fake QR code. So when you click on it, you basically get taken to some horrible, rancid, hacked or hackable address where they can just download all of your stuff.
Yes.
And I think Donald's warning is so useful for everyone who listens to Mike Graham, watches Mike Graham, and is on X or Twitter. That I know 3 people who have had this, and I have had the direct messages, and it does always seem to say, "Please vote for me in this random competition."
Yes, I've had those.
Don't click on them. That's how it seems to be spreading.
Too late though.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I had a similar problem, which I still haven't solved, by the way, because we've got some people now looking after our various different sort of social media accounts, and they want us to get into my Facebook account, and they said, "Here's how you do it," because I'm famously not particularly, well versed in all that stuff, and so they took me through the various, procedures, get into settings, do this, do that, do the other, and it kept saying to me, "Please sign in using your Instagram account," which I then did. But then I got locked out of my Instagram account because they said, "We don't recognise the device you're using."
Well, that's what happened to me. Jesus.
Well, what do you want me to do then? And then it said, and then I managed to sort of reopen it again, managed to get into it, and then managed to register, managed to log in, went back to Facebook, and it said, "Please log into your Instagram account." I'm like, "I have logged into it. What do you want me to do?" And I got stuck in this sort of horrendous loop of doom where I couldn't do anything, and then it locked me out of Instagram for the rest of the week, and said, we'll now be deactivating your account for the next 5 days. I'm like, what?
Well, just to add, it wasn't just X. They hit my 2 email accounts.
Oh, really?
So you've got you've got to put your email in when you're filling the one you use, and I also had a secondary email that I used.
Recovery email, they call it.
Both of them, I had to go through another 4 hours, because I'm a technophobe. I've not got the patience for all that to re-register my emails. Both of them. It was a nightmare.
But we are all slaves to this stuff, aren't we, Annunziata? Because at the end of the day now, I now find myself getting wound up by people paying cash for things. I used to be very happy that people were paying cash, and I used to go, "This is great." But whenever I'm now in a shop or something, or I was in a Pret, I think, the other day, in a little queue. There was only 2 people in it, and we're all very impatient these days. And there was a woman paying for something in cash and was like sort of counting out.
I'm with her, 100%.
No, but I'm going, "But you just get on with it. Just do that with a bleeding card,
No, don't do the cards.
We've all been sort of reprogrammed, right? To not spend any time doing anything.
We have, but also modern life just doesn't work without social media, without email, we're on Zoom now. I'm not in London. We couldn't do this without the technology that we all have to log into, we all have to use passwords for, and we have to be able to trust. And the problem is that we can't currently trust a lot of it, and that hackers will find ways around. And digital ID, great, hacker's dream. When
Absolutely.
all your details are in one place and your entire life is before them, they'll definitely find ways of getting into that information, which really worries me.
It does. I mean, Jasmine, you're in the financial business. I mean, I have this sort of recurring occasional nightmare where I wake up in the morning and I go and check my various different accounts, whether it's my, pension or my bank account or my business account or whatever it is, and I just have this horrible feeling that there's going to be nothing there. Somebody's going to
well, that happened to me before.
That happened to you, yeah. Maybe these are the same people, and somebody's just going to remove all of the money you've got, and you never see it again.
Well, the thing is, genuinely, it's not without possibility, because, for example, when you put money into a bank account, it is legally theirs. So this is why legally it is their money, which is why if you go into the bank and say, I'd like £5,000, they go, no, they can do that. Go, no, they say, what are you going to use it for? You go, well, it's not your business. No, we want to know and legally they can do that. And that means also that they can legally do what's called bail-ins. I mean, we've heard about bailouts. We had bailouts back in 2008. Taxpayer went and bailed out the banks. But in 2014 in Cyprus, people lost 20% of their money because the banks said, they closed the doors, literally closed everything and said, we've really screwed up. We've lost a load of money. We're going to take 20% of all of our customers' money. That's a bail-in. And they could do that here. Legally, they could do that. So I always tell people, don't have much money in the bank. Have it elsewhere. Have what you have to have in the bank. But don't put, all your life savings, because you could lose some of it.
Yeah. Well, they did that also back in 2007, with the banking crisis.
That's what she's talking about,
I mean, but they did it with business. They suddenly devalued your business, grabbed it, and then sold it for buttons. They would just say, you owe us X amount, but we value your property, your business at half of that, and we're going to sell it at that. And so many people just got absolutely wiped out by that, and it's not changed. That was the biggest failing of government. We talk about Alistair Darling and what do you call him, Gordon Brown. That was the biggest failing in government, with not making sure that the banks supported the customers. Instead of supporting themselves. They were the worst, the GRU unit. They were absolutely terrible, disgraceful. They still get away with it.
Yes, well, anyway, I hope you get your account back soon.
Well, I got the bank. You got the banking one sorted out, but this is driving me insane, because I'm wanting to do it.
Well, I'm now not going to mention you in any of my tweets anymore, because I'm worried that they're going to come after me if I do that.
No, you're too late.
Jasmine, how about you? You've got HMRC, always a popular plank.
Yes, absolutely. Now, this is particularly because, I mean, as you say, always a popular plank, because they're always really doing everything they can to harm things for us. But this is particularly because in April, just in a couple of weeks' time, they're bringing in making tax digital. And this was brought in by the last government. And like so many government projects, it's taken way too long and costed way too much money to do. But anyway, making tax digital is aimed at people like me, who are self-employed, probably all of us actually, self-employed, and also people who are landlords. So if you make more than £50,000 a year, you're going to have to do this making tax digital this April. If it's more than 30,000, it's next April. If it's more than 20,000, then it's the April after that. And basically, because, those of us who work for ourselves, we sit around, twiddle our thumbs, anything to do at all. They want us to give in our digital tax records, or digital versions of our receipts 4 times a year. So every quarter you have to do it instead of doing it at the end of the year. And, it's basically because they think we're all rolling in money and we're all totally fiddling the books all the time. They want to see it. And it's just another example, I think, of government getting us to do their work.
Yes.
Even though we have a bigger government now than we have ever had, we're spending more money on government than we ever had. And still, we, the taxpayers, the customers, essentially, the ones who are actually trying to make a living, we're having to do yet more work for them.
Yeah, it is ridiculous, isn't it? And I mean, it used to be the case that, I mean, we're getting more and more like, I remember when I went to live in America back in the 80s, and I was always astonished that you had to file a tax return. I'd never heard of such a thing, you know, whereas now, not only do you have to file a tax return if you're self-employed, you have to file one now if you're employed. So you still basically have to either find an accountant and pay for one or figure it all out for yourself. I mean, I'm, again, useless at all of this stuff, so I've got an accountant, but it costs me quite a lot of money. And every single time they change the rules, Annunziata, you end up having to pay the accountant more because now the accountant's working harder as well.
And if you don't do it in time, you get fined.
I got my accountant's bill this morning, but I could not do it without them. There used to be an advert. Tax shouldn't be taxing. It is so taxing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know where to begin with so many elements. And as you say, I mean, I am self-employed. I have to give a tax return. But HMRC itself is so impossible to deal with. It is so incompetent. It gets its own figures wrong so often that without very good advice, all of us are going to fall into traps. And lowering this down and down and down, this is not to catch multimillionaires. This is not to, raise tax revenue from people who are genuinely dodging. It's to attack the small person.
Right.
And that seems to be a bit of a theme. But, you know, where does it end? I mean, should we have to do it weekly just to make their lives more simple? I did speak to one person who is going to fall into this category, and they cheerfully said, well, of course, they haven't realised that if I have to file my receipts so much more often, I'm going to remember what a lot more of them are for and why they're genuine. So I will be offsetting an awful lot more tax than I was before.
Good for them. Yes, that's a very good point. I mean, what the tax office says is, it'll make it easier for you. Yeah, no, it won't. But it'll spread, as you say, you'll spread it across the year. But I mean, even accountants, I've got a couple of accountants, and they both say that it's almost impossible now, even for accountants, to get through to anybody at HMRC. And yet, as I say, we're spending all this money, and as Annunziata says, where's that money going? Where is it going?
Yeah. Well, we know where it's going. It's all going down to the migrant hotel down the road, where they're giving them 3 square meals a day and driving them off to watch Liverpool playing Arsenal for free. That's where it's all going. But look at Angela Rayner, for example. You know, I keep questioning this every week and nobody's got an answer for me yet. You know, whenever I've ever had any dealings with HMRC, they don't go, oh, well, just wait a few months and see whether you can sort out your situation, which apparently is what she's doing. She doesn't apparently know how much tax, she doesn't know how much tax she owes, right? She doesn't know how much income tax she's got. She doesn't know about property tax. She doesn't know about council tax. She doesn't know about stamp duty. And apparently the HMRC people are just going, oh, well, you know, when you get around to it, just tell us how much you think you owe us. And
don't you worry, Hen.
Can you imagine if that was us? We'd be like, they'd be literally like, they'd be chasing you with a letter every bleeding day coming through the letterbox, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And a fine that just keeps going up.
And a fine that just keeps accruing,
and
exactly right. Right, it's down to me now for my first nomination, and I'm going to go with the first of many cabinet ministers. This will be Mr. Steve Reed, who is, of course, the Communities Minister, former Secretary of State for the Environment, having had the great qualification of being leader of Lambeth Council, which is about the most unenvironmentally friendly place in London, I think. It's not very far from here. Steve Reed this week got up in the House of Commons and unveiled his new plan for not quite an Islamophobia law, but basically the protection of Muslim rights law. And he's basically come out and said that what we need in this country is a rule and a law which makes it impossible for you to make fun of Muslims. It makes it impossible for you to make fun of Islam or of Muhammad. You certainly couldn't draw a cartoon and put him on the front of a magazine. And basically, the government wants to make it impossible for Muslims to be offended by you or me, because they will basically prosecute you or me if we say anything that they don't like. And the thing that I really don't like about this law that they want to bring in is that it's subjective on the person who is taking offence, right? So it means that if I say to you, Jasmine, you know, to be honest, I think that's a pretty awful looking top you're wearing. It doesn't really suit you. And if I were you, I'd wear blue rather than red. And you go, well, I find that very offensive. And you call the police. I mean, that's effectively what they're going to do. Because you're going to say, well, Mike Graham's offended me. I think you should go and arrest him. That's the law.
Yes. Well, in effect, that's.
I don't mind the jumper, by the way. I just wanted to make that point.
Right.
You can do with a tie.
We've got about 30 people a day already being arrested.
Yeah.
Or things that they're, putting hurty words on Twitter or whatever, so this is something that I tell my lefty friends when they say, oh, I'm not having anything to do with anything American. Have you seen what they're doing there? They're looking at people's social media if they want to come into the country and say anything rude about them.
Right.
And I was like, 30 people a day in this country. If you want to blank something, blank British stuff, just don't buy British because we're doing this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree about the Islamophobia one. I saw on Daily Skeptic that under these new proposed rules, even children's pictures could be counted as Islamophobic.
It really is extraordinary, isn't it, Annunziata? I mean, I don't know how we quite got to this place, but the Free Speech Union happily is fighting it and saying, look, we do not want this very vague and subjective kind of nonsense being brought in as a law.
And children's pictures, it's not just of Muhammad, it's pictures of Jesus. I mean, about half our primary schools are Church of England schools, and their pupils could be directed to never depict Jesus, which in our Christian culture, the predominant one in this country, is a way of understanding and worshipping our gods, three in one. And I think it's absolutely unbelievable that we should have our speech silenced in this way. And ironically, last night, on Wednesday night, there was a great victory prohibiting the continued use of non-crime hate incidents. That is really good news for free speech. And yet simultaneously they bring in this, which is going to make it all much worse again, but only protecting one religion, and no other religion has any protection. That people say, well, Jewishness is protected.
Yes,
that's
right.
because that is an ethnicity. Islam is not an ethnicity, just as Christianity is not. And in fact, we really should have freedom of speech, freedom to criticize any religion whatsoever. That, I think some of the notions of Buddhists are a bit bonkers. I should be allowed to say that, but I should be allowed to say that about Islam too. And also, a lot of the things that are being brought into this are deeply cultural. They're not religious anyway.
Right.
That Islam itself does not say women have to cover up. That is interpretation and cultural norms that are definitely open to criticism and should rightly be so.
Absolutely right.
As a lifelong church-going Christian myself, I've noticed that it's perfectly acceptable to say anything you like about Christians. Christians are, we just, you turn the other cheek, don't you? So nobody seems to want to protect Christians' feelings, but anybody else, as you say, Annunziata, and particularly Islam, suddenly you have to be told what you can and can't say. Well, it's simply not fair. Every religion needs to take it on the chin in the same way.
Well, the most recent times, the worst offences that I see is the anti-Semitism that's blatant. It's on
but they don't want to bring a law in about that.
It's on the streets, it's in marches, the real visceral hatred of the Jewish people, and that is allowed. And I think, well, that is a hate crime to me. And there's laws in place for that, yet they're never applied. So why do you need another sort of dilution, another branch of law just for one set of religious people? And I think the laws are in place. They're just not getting used. They're not getting applied.
Well, no, because the police are not minded to protect the Jewish population. In fact, we spoke to Jean Hatchett, who's a campaigner in Sheffield, who last weekend was the woman who was out on the streets because there were three men, dressed in sort of Palestinian-related garb, and I say that because they were wearing, sort of Palestinian hat with the green, white, and red on it and all that. And they were going door to door in Sheffield, knocking on people's doors and asking them if they would be willing to boycott Israeli goods. And then they were taking down their details and putting them in a book as to whether or not these would be either Jewish people or people who were sympathetic to Israel. And when she challenged them, her partner got punched in the face by one of them, and they got sort of roundly abused for about 15 minutes. And she went to the police, and the police have done nothing at all. And the police have said, not only are we not going to prosecute people for collecting information effectively like a Jew list, and also we're not going to do them for assault.
And that whole campaign is being fully supported by the Green Party.
Yes.
It is insidious sectarianisation of our country that I think is very worrying.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely dreadful. Back to you, Annunziata, for your second nomination. I have got you down for the Bank of England.
Yeah. Well, I quite like being British, and I think we should honour the great men and women who have made our country the country it is. And those people, we stand upon their shoulders, and they deserve rightfully to be widely recognised. And money is a way of making sure that their names are not forgotten, that their names are permanently within our view. And removing them to put on pretty pictures of nature. I love nature, it's wonderful. Please don't misunderstand me. I think that all our little bunny rabbits and pretty flowers are great. And actually, our country has amongst the most beautiful nature in the world. However, eradicating the importance of our historical figures on our banknotes, I think, is a real crime against our culture. And the Bank of England have done this very, very cleverly, that they clearly wanted to get rid of people like Churchill, like Adam Smith. And to do so, they did a consultation so that it all looks lovely, and this is what the people want.
Yeah.
But they didn't say, do you want Churchill or a badger? They said, do you want images of nature or cultural and historic figures? Well, that's so anodyne. No one's going to say, oh, yes, please, let me have some figures. I don't know who they might be, but great.
Right.
And so people came back and said, nature sounds quite nice. The margin wasn't huge, but nature came top. And they're using this as the excuse to get rid of the really great men. I mean, Alan Turing goes, the list is extensive, but we really should, as a country and a culture, promote and support the history that is why we are all here. That without Churchill, when we were fighting the war on our own after the fall of France, without Churchill, we would now be in a German-speaking, or at the very least German outpost, and quite possibly run by fascists. And I don't think that there is any excuse.
Are we not run by fascists at the moment?
For cancelling such people.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. Also, do you not think this is as well a kind of a cover story, if you like, for not just getting rid of certain individuals, but for getting rid of one individual, i.e. Winston Churchill, who was on the note that they want to get rid of, because now the new narrative about Winston Churchill, we saw it the day after Hannah Spencer got elected, didn't we, in Gorton and Denton last week. They suddenly decided to deface the Churchill statue in Parliament Square, and paint war criminal on it, and Zionist and all this kind of horrible stuff. All members of the Green Party.
It is extraordinary.
Yeah.
It is absolutely extraordinary how all these hardcore leftists oppose a man who stopped far-right fascism.
Yes.
That I can't ever quite work out what logic they are working on to go down that route.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a small subsection of people who hate our great historic figures, and they come up with various different reasons. And basically, they are ashamed of our country. They're ashamed of our history. And I think we should be ashamed of them and support the people who put their own lives and their own abilities on the line for the sake of all of us.
And this is one of the things that I think, Jasmine, is an issue with the internet. We've known about the hacking issue, which is a major one. But you go on to Wikipedia and look up certain things, including Winston Churchill, and you get a whole diatribe of stuff, much of which isn't actually true. Like how he caused the famine in Bangladesh which wasn't even a country in those days because of the siege of the Bay of Bengal, which wasn't even his decision, which didn't happen because of anything other than a wartime manoeuvre to stop, military traffic from going from point A to point. They make out that, Churchill was responsible for starving all these terrible, these horrible local people in Bangladesh. No, he wasn't. But it's written down, and so stupid people read it and go, well, it must be true.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as my view of Wikipedia is, if they like somebody, they must be bad.
Yeah.
And if they don't, they must be good. And anybody, you will notice anybody like Naomi Wolf, or I'm not sure what they're putting about me, anybody who spoke against the COVID jab, anybody who questions climate change, they are immediately conspiracy theorists.
Right.
I always look, is it a conspiracy theorist? Oh, good, they'll be a good person. I'll listen to them then, according to Wikipedia. I mean, Wikipedia, that's as far as I'm concerned.
Very good.
And it's all being picked up by AI as well. If you go onto ChatGPT or another one that I've just tried, Claude, which is like ChatGPT, I asked them, was the COVID vaccine safe and effective? And they go, oh, yes, it was, yes.
Right.
Because they're taking all this junk from the internet, and this is the junk that is being recycled. Thank you very much.
And that's when people start to believe things which are facts, which are clearly not facts. I was listening to a debate the other day on the radio, and a guy rang in, and I'm ashamed to say it was James O'Brien's show, I think, or it was LBC anyway. And I had on in the car. And this guy rang in, it was on the subject of jury trials, and he said, well, the thing is, you've got to just use ChatGPT, and you don't need juries. And I'm going, sorry? And he said, because they know what facts are. And I'm like, look, the whole reason the case is in court is because the facts are in question, and nobody knows what the facts are. You can't just go, did this man enter this house and steal that, washing machine? Because that's not the case, So people have become sort of directed in a way. Their brains have been rewired to think that if it says it on the internet, it must be true.
But this goes back much deeper than just the internet. And I think we really have to look at our education system, where great moments of our history have been eradicated. Yes, that they still do the Second World War, and of course that covers Churchill. But in every subject, there's a kind of silent bias that goes on that can become very, very obvious. So one of my children is currently studying Animal Farm. And if you read her textbook without any knowledge of history or politics, you would have come out thinking that Marx and by extension Lenin and Stalin were the good guys.
Yes, which is extraordinary, isn't
I wouldn't worry about too much.
14, you shouldn't be taught that as a one-sided thing in school. I couldn't be further from Marx if I tried, but I can see the argument for discussing his ideas and learning about them, but not unless you learn about what happened because of them.
Yes.
Well, I couldn't agree more with what all you've said there, but I wouldn't worry too much about Churchill maybe picking off some banknotes, because the way it's going just now, there'll be no banknotes in circulation pretty soon. I think that's the bigger picture. They're just trying to get us all on sort of credit cards, digital. Maybe they'll put some wee chips in our arms that we can sort of beep, beep, beep.
Well, there are people that have got those.
Yeah, in Sweden they were.
That really worries me, though, and I live in near Skegness, and it's a particularly poor area of the country on the whole, and a lot of people use cash, and there are numerous reasons for that. One of the biggest is budgeting, and having to really count every penny in a way that you just can't if you tap every time. And it will hit the worst off most acutely if cash does disappear.
As we're speaking, as we are speaking, I've just had a news alert which has come in which it says that basically banks' customers have seen other people's transactions on their apps after a technical glitch.
Oh,
I bet yours are on there.
Oh no, not again.
I mean, don't you find when you always speak to you phone your bank if if you can get through, and they go, "Have you got the app?" No, I haven't.
Right.
I mean, I'm a financial journalist, and I will not, if I possibly can, download their apps. Apps
I
are
will not
legal.
do it either. I refuse to do it. I'll phone them and then go through the procedure. Just
Yeah.
But that drives you insane, though, doesn't it?
You know, but I'll tell you, what drove me nearly insane was just picking up and getting told you were in overdraft. I mean, what? And the amount of money that they had taken out my account and my daughter's and the associated accounts, just boom. That was one of the most
You've got to stop going to those.
sickening,
You've got to
scary
stop going
things.
to those dodgy outlets that you buy things from. That's obviously where it's gone wrong.
Listen, I wouldn't wish it in my worst enemy. Well, I would actually wish it in my worst enemy.
This is Lloyd's, Halifax, and Bank of Scotland. So I mean, it's that group who have got this particular problem.
Maybe we'll find out who's pulling Keir's strings, because it'd be quite interesting to see inside the Labour Party machine's accounts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are pulling Keir Starmer.
There's been a lot of money coming from Lord Ali, I suspect, which we'll come back to in a minute. I'm going to just do the next one because I've got a few to get through here. And my plank this week is football in general. I don't know whether you've watched any football recently, but because we're in the middle of Ramadan.
I like the head shake.
No, not really.
No. What's football?
So, because Ramadan is the month of fasting, if you happen to be a Muslim, the Premier League of Great Britain, well, of England, the Premier League of England, have decided that they will allow for stoppages in football matches so that Muslim players can have a drink of some kind of supplement that they're taking in order that they can maintain their fitness levels because they're fasting, right? That's one thing. We also had, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, in Manchester United's ground at Old Trafford. This week it was in Tottenham Hotspur's ground in North London. They had an iftar, and I think we can see it. Shall we play that clip? Now, I don't know about, you probably don't know this, but Tottenham Hotspur is a fairly Jewish club, right? It's got a lot of Jewish fans. They call themselves the Yids, and they're quite happy to boast about that. And I've seen lots and lots of messages from many Spurs fans, some of whom are friends of mine, saying, what on earth are we doing? Why are we doing this? What is the point? It's not a mosque. It's a sports stadium. And the Ramadan thing is, if you're fasting and you happen to be an athlete, then if you can't make yourself available for the game, then just don't play. You shouldn't be stopping the football match. There's another video, which we may play, we may not, of Ryan Reynolds, the American Hollywood star who bought Wrexham Football Club. And he's watching a cup match between Wrexham and Chelsea. And they do the same thing, where they stop the game in the middle of it. And one of the Chelsea players, who happens to be a Muslim, gets down on his knees and starts drinking out of this kind of, pouch of, I don't know, what do you call that? Rehydration energy type drink. And you can see somebody trying to explain to him what's going on. And he's kind of going, what? They're doing what? And you just think, we've got this capacity now to just kind of roll over.
Culturally
we've got, the cultural appropriation. We've got, as I say, Steve Reed talking about, you can't upset Muslims, you can't make fun of them. Now we have to apparently stop sporting matches in order for them to be accommodated. Somebody said to me as a joke, what are we going to do on Boxing Day? You're going to stop the play so that people can get a box of Quality Street out and a few chocolates, because that's what we do. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
The thing is, over here, they would probably in Boxing Day stop the game and then say, and praise Santa. It won't be anything religious,
No, you can't have anything Christian. No, exactly. But it's mad, isn't it?
But terrible.
It is mad.
In Scotland, we that's not quite affected the matches yet. We had
well, we'll come to Scotland in a minute. Let me just hear from Annunziata here.
Okay.
I think our national religion is probably closer to being football than anything else, and disrupting it for any reason seems absolutely unnecessary and unreasonable. And there are, of course, as with any religion's fasting, there are exemptions you can get for all sorts of different reasons. And I don't know specifically about athletes, but certainly, the elderly, the young, pregnant women, those with disabilities, those with diabetes, can all get exemptions from fasting for Ramadan. And I would suggest the players find a liberal imam, seeing that it is all decentralised, who says, absolutely fine, don't worry about it if you've got to play games.
Yeah, I know.
It does seem to be, as we've been saying, there's a deliberate undermining of our sense of our own culture, of our sense of being British. It's being vilified. We're getting more and more people who have different views, from different countries, who are saying, no, our culture is the big one, and no, our culture is the big one, and you're all rubbish, And the media, the police, the very much academia, government, and they're all agreeing with this. And again, we saw this during COVID, during lockdowns. There was the same idea being beaten out like a drum throughout all the institutions, that this is the way to think, not that way. And this is the thing with this, I think, as well.
It does feel absolutely that the tail is wagging the dog. That if you actually look at the breakdown of this country, we are no longer a Christian majority country. It's about 47% of us identify ourselves as Christian. We do still have a Christian constitution, but in terms of observance, we're just under half. But 47% is 40% more than the 7% of the population who are Muslim. And of course we should be accommodating to them being allowed to practice their own worship. But I do not understand why it should change the life experience of the majority of us, which obviously includes halal meat, which is virtually everywhere, and most of us think is incredibly cruel.
Yeah, I try not to have it as well, yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. But of course, the problem is with an awful lot of that halal meat, you don't know you're eating it because they don't tell you.
And of course, it's better than having Bill Gates's pretend meat, which I think is in restaurants across America.
I think that's what Mrs. Gates was objecting to as well, because she divorced him and she found out he was doing something with his pretend meat. But that's another story. Anyway,
that's kosher.
Sorry to drag it down into the gutter. The other thing I wanted to mention about football before we go on is in Scotland at the weekend. Big game between Glasgow Celtic and Glasgow Rangers, as we call them here, and it degenerated into a terrible pitch invasion, firing missiles at each other. It was like a throwback to the 80s.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, it's the first time that they've allowed the away fans in numbers to one of these stadiums, like it was Ibrox this time.
Yeah.
So they allowed the large Celtic support in at one of the ends. My God, you're talking about, stopping a game.
Yeah. This was not for Ramadan.
Right? Bringing out the prayer mats and stuff like that. We're still plugged into that vile, bigoted, hated Catholic Protestant in Scotland, more so than in Northern Ireland, because a lot of the Irish come over for that game, the Northern Irish. It's absolutely abhorrent. And they just hate each other.
I know.
And the violence, the destruction at the end of that match, the throwing of flare.
Well, the Rangers sort of hooligans were wearing these blue balaclavas.
Yeah, but Spider-Man or no, it was Spider-Man. It was like a lion rampant, and you just think. And with the Celtic supporters, they had this sort of green, white, and gold.
And the Palestine flags. It's just mad.
I mean, it's
insane.
But apparently, the behind the scenes. All the toilets totally smashed by the Celtic fans. They then destroyed some of the kiosks selling food. They ripped up all the chairs. They're entitled, the Green Brigade just decided, well, we don't have a ticket. We want to see this match, and they en masse forced their way through the barriers and battered some of the stewards in the process.
That's what happened with
It's disgraceful. It's disgusting.
But nobody's doing anything about it.
But the worst thing about this,
they're not doing anything about it.
Well, the Scottish Football League, SFA will do something about it, because they're not like the Scottish Football League, which is run by the teams. But Glasgow Celtic and Glasgow Rangers have not come out and condemned
No, of course not.
the fans, and they've not said any banning orders because they're scared in case their houses get hit or their cars get blown up in the driveway.
When I was working in Scotland, I got invited to a lunch at Ibrox once, and I went, and it was in the days of what was his face? He used to be the owner, the Scottish guy with no legs.
Oh, David Murray.
David Murray, yeah. And we sat down and we had lunch. I was talking to a couple of the executives afterwards, and they couldn't even say the word Celtic. The guy was like, that team across the town. I was like, if you can't even say the word, you got no hope. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Anyway, so football, generally speaking, in there. Jasmine, coming back to you, a bit of royal family action. It looks as though now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's daughters are in the dark stuff.
Yes, they've been protected for a while. Quite a few people have said, oh, poor Beatrice and Eugenie, must be terrible having those parents, particularly that father, and they're such lovely girls. And then gradually the narrative has changed, and people have been saying, oh, they've got all these dodgy things over in the UAE, and they've got these dodgy, they did know about this. And I mean, part of me thinks, well, honestly, with those parents who take you to a P. Diddy party, there's something wrong there. Poor little loves on the one hand, but on the other hand, they are, they're big grown girls now, and they're doing their own nefarious stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, and they've apparently been in, well, at least I don't know if it's not sure to say that they received the money, but Andrew apparently pushed for them to receive £100,000 in secret payments from a billionaire while he was trade envoy to the United Kingdom government. I mean, it's extraordinary, this story, isn't it? Annunziata?
It is, exactly. Oh, well, it's absolutely extraordinary. Him and Mandelson, they've done very, very nicely through their connections and their alleged work for the country.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, again, you could say, well, that's Daddy doing it, but they were like, yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, I'll have that, and we'll have more of that. So this is why they're already resigning from charities, and I think there's one charity left that they're on. People are saying they should resign from that. It's a shame, it's how they've been brought up, but they could have rejected it, and they didn't. They just went along with that lifestyle.
Yeah. I think that's right. And I mean, the most ignominious thing has happened. They've been told by Royal Ascot that they can't any longer travel in the royal carriage. And so imagine the shame of having to actually buy a ticket.
Or possibly
walk in to hospitality.
And they'll probably both wear terrible outfits that cost a fortune.
Yes.
There seems to be a habit of minor royals of the most irrelevant sort, where the classic royals, the Princess of Wales, the current one, the previous one, Princess Anne, even Zara Tindall dress immaculately. There's a whole bunch of them who do dress very inappropriately and very expensively for no good reason that I can see. I think they should just become an irrelevance. They don't get taxpayer money, thank God. They don't deserve it. They don't do public engagements of any meaningful sort. I think we should scrap them doing anything at all.
Yeah.
It might be their father's disgrace, but they were there. They went to see Epstein straight after he came out of jail with their mother, but they were in their 20s. They were free agents to make their own decisions. And I think that if my mother suggested that I went on holiday with a recently released paedophile, even in my 20s, I would have said, no thanks, Mum. What are you on about? You're clearly mad.
Right, yeah. Which they should have said to her quite some time before that, to be honest, because she was clearly very mad anyway.
It seems that they are the biggest charity,
I know.
Please, start. We're going to have more.
I know,
have more.
But this is the thing. It now appears that more and more we find out that these are people who literally just scrounge off everyone. I mean, that Fergie letter or email that was sent to Epstein begging for some airline fares. You just kind of go...
And did she not also want a shaggy weekend, couldn't wait to the next... And you're going,
and then she also said, I've got this friend, you'd really like her, she's got a great body.
What have you been doing for your money?
Yeah, maybe you should marry her, and if you don't want to marry her, why don't you marry me, and then we can have her as our slave. And you're kind of going, what sort of world do these people live in? You know, it's awful. By the way, Pooch, before we go on, would you mind just shooting behind me, if you can see down to that corner there,
you did have to, didn't you?
This is a poster for a live show that we're doing in May the 6th. We're doing a show at Shepherd's Bush Empire, which is an iconic old theatre in West London. Donald, kindly enough, produced the poster and then tried to stick it up on the wall. And just before we were due to start this show, it basically fell off the wall because even he could not make it affix to the wall.
And you all burst out laughing.
We all burst out laughing. Here it is. Yeah, Mike Graham and friends, you're both very welcome to come along and join us if you wish.
It's got non-stick walls.
It's got, we need to put it up on a frame and do it properly. But anyway, so I just thought I'd mention that.
Toss it back. Well, I'll put it back on the floor.
But don't wreck it though, because we want to put it up eventually. We just need something better to stick it up with. Maybe some blue tack. Or someone better, Very true.
One push,
very true. Just before I come to you with John Swinney, I'm going to do, because there's a couple of Labour people I need to separate one from the other. The first is John Healey, Secretary of State for Defence. This is the guy who, when Labour got into power, actually I even said it, I thought he's one guy that is probably one of the more sensible members of the cabinet. He seems to have his head screwed on. He's been in government before. I think he was a junior minister in Tony Blair's government, or Gordon Brown's, one of the two. But in the past week and a half or so, since the whole Iranian crisis has happened, he has been worse than useless, right? Completely and utterly hopeless, where he goes on TV, he can't say when he's asked whether or not we support the American action. All he can say is that we were not involved, as Keir Starmer said. But he couldn't give an opinion as to whether we were in support of them or not. And I can't believe that that's what he actually thinks. I think he must either agree with it or not agree with it, but he's not allowed to say. But the thing that I want to put him in as a plank for is the complete and utter inability of the Department of Defence to do anything remotely right? We've sent this week to Cyprus HMS Dragon. It turns out that...
dragging its heels.
Dragging its heels. It turns out that only the British government alone didn't realise that there was a build-up of massive air power and firepower and naval sea power in the Middle East. You know, nobody noticed in government that the Americans had put like the 7th Fleet around Iran and were probably quite likely to attack it any minute now. It's going to take something like a week and a half to get there. It has to be escorted by the French because we don't have any other frigates or destroyers to go with it. And in fact, I can give you a list here. HMS Duncan, HMS Daring, HMS Dauntless, HMS Diamond, HMS Defender, HMS Portland, HMS Kent, HMS Sutherland, HMS Somerset, HMS Richmond, HMS Iron Duke. All of those particular boats are in dry dock being fixed. And you think, who's organising this? You know, it's like having a fleet of buses when you run a bus company and only having one of them that actually goes out and picks people up.
This is symptomatic of the whole of Europe. I think it's not just us. This is why Europe now is seen as an irrelevance, on the world stage. And all European leaders can do is go, oh, that wasn't very good. Oh, we don't like that.
Well, yeah, but even the French have got a better navy than we have now.
The Greeks sent 3 frigates, was it, or something like that? I mean, I think that's all they've got, but at least it's more than us. It's, straight out there, protect
our defence procurement is an absolute joke. The things we buy that don't work have been phenomenal. We've wasted a fortune. And then we buy things that do work, but we don't have the support, or we don't have the other bits that you need to make it work in concert together. And it is just completely not fit for purpose. Billions go towards it. I think we should certainly be spending more on defence, but what we do spend needs to be spent well.
Yeah, the procurement is absolutely disgraceful. I mean,
it's dreadful, isn't it?
But in all big departments, education, NHS procurement, look at the money that's wasted, billions across.
But you've also got the Prime Minister who spent the best part of last year trying to be, Mr. Coalition of the Willing, travelling around trying to fix for loads of people to go and fight in Ukraine as peacekeepers, right? And he kept saying we were going to be on a war footing. Well, it doesn't look like it, does it?
Yeah, the Russians must have been trembling. I mean, they're just they can't do anything at the moment for laughing. I mean, they're just...
I know. Maybe that's our plan.
Can you imagine?
To catch them unawares while they're having a laughing fit.
Can you imagine if in 1939 we had taken the approach Keir has so far?
I know.
He has done no preparation for an escalation that was very, very likely to happen. Whether the escalation was in Ukraine or Iran, either way, both could be seen coming. And nothing was prepared at all. It's a complete dereliction of duty.
Well, World War II, they weren't prepared in 1939. They had, they had to really get very quickly, and the whole country got behind them, and to produce the planes, to make the boats, to bring the equipment, make the shells. Everybody, to go in the farmland and get the food for the people. We did that very quickly, but it was a will of the people. I doubt very much there'd be a will in this country at the moment for that to ever happen again. And we'd all be arguing, I'm on their side. Oh, I know. It's very fractious at the moment.
Totally bizarre. Which brings me on to your next final nomination, John Swinney, because if it was up to the SNP, there wouldn't be a Navy at all, would there?
Well, exactly. I mean, I remember with the great Alex Salmond, he was delighted that he took over the fisheries. That was his... He loved the fact that he could be a wee admiral of the fisheries protection up there, but I don't know if we've even got that anymore. But the reason I'm picking John Swinney, Honest John, or Dishonest John, as I'd like to call him, is the debacle, the furore over the Lord Advocate's dual role as head of Scotland's prosecution service and the Scottish Government's law officer. And with a seat in cabinet, and it looks as if because of this dual role, she's been tipping off Honest John about all manners of things. The Murrell trial, she knew about that, and the whole Sturgeon thing that's going on at the moment. She's been dropping hints to him. When really she shouldn't have been, and given advice. I mean, she shouldn't have been. That should have been went to the Scottish Parliament. And so they've produced some papers, heavily redacted, of course they are. Of course. And he's been defending this dual role, which is quite obviously buckled. You can see that he's getting tips way ahead of anybody else on his party's misgivings, the people that are deemed or alleged to have committed crimes, notably Peter Murrell and by association the former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. So I think it's disgraceful, and what is good today, and I would have never said this in the past, that Westminster is now to introduce new legislation to allow the separation of the roles of Scotland's top law officer. And my God, that's not went down well, as you can imagine, with John Swinney and the SNP cohort.
But you have to wonder, and I know that there are probably still, I think there are still proceedings ongoing, aren't there, about Murrell and some of the monies that disappeared. But again, a bit like this Labour government, which I'm going to get onto in a minute, it's hard to imagine how they're still in power in Scotland, the SNP, after all of the nonsense that went on, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you get the £1 billion ferry scandal. That's
ferry scandal. There's the caravan scandal. The financial,
I didn't see that caravan.
The financial scandal. I mean,
the mobile home.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a similarity, isn't there, between the rottenness at the heart of the SNP and the rottenness at the heart of Labour.
Yes,
Annunziata.
Yeah, and also on the SNP's watch, the education system in Scotland has
falling
gone from being the
apart.
best in the UK to falling apart.
Yeah.
The NHS, we've seen the scandal of the hospital with the poisoned
Yeah.
water. There are so many
You
really
can't keep
major
up with it
mistakes
all.
that are on the SNP. They can't blame them on Westminster. But I think the most amazing bit of the story to me has been quite how trusting Nicola Sturgeon must be. That I don't know about Jasmine, or I don't know if you're married or not, but if your partner went out and started buying things from MAC and Estee Lauder and Cartier, would you not ask
Handbags,
the odd question?
shoes.
Yes, yeah. Well, wouldn't you just? Yes, you'd want to see said items, and
Yeah.
went around. You'd think that's a little strange, just a little strange.
And then you find out, that there's 500,000 mysteriously went missing from the SNP accounts, and then of course even worse, where's the 700 million went in the whole of government? There's a black hole there of 700 million. What's happened to the money? There's nobody being pulled up or made accountable for that, or explaining this is what we spent it on. And you know that a large proportion of that has went off to fight for the next independence battle.
Yeah.
Which just, even polls, people are saying, it's still the same.
It's the same, if not
it's never
actually
going to
worse
happen
for them.
No.
But he was on Laura Kunsberg, I think, on last Sunday, and saying that, he believes that if they had another referendum today, they would win it. And it's complete and utter cobblers. It's rubbish. Just rubbish.
No chance.
Anyway, well, it brings me to the final nomination, which I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, has to be Keir Starmer, who's in every bleeding week. But this week, and I say this every time he's in it, this is even worse than last week, where now we're told in a series of secret files which have been released by the Mandelson-Epstein scenario, that not only did he know that Mandelson's relationship with Epstein was as deep and as long as it had been, but also he knew how recently they'd been in touch with each other. So all of the things that he said, where he said, I was lied to, he told us wrong information when we questioned him, it's all rubbish. It's all complete nonsense. And I'm sorry to say, it's all lies. And if the Prime Minister, surely to God, has lied to the Parliament, lied to the country, lied to his own cabinet ministers, lied to his own party, how on earth can he still be Prime Minister? I mean, I literally went home yesterday afternoon, Wednesday, saw that this news had broken, went for a nap, thought by the time I've woken up, he'll have been gone. He'll have resigned. Because he can't possibly...
Doing that every week, haven't we?
Yeah, but he couldn't possibly survive this. Never mind everything else. And yet he's still there. This message timed at, 11:51 on Thursday when we're recording this. But, maybe by the time you watch it tomorrow night, he'll have gone. But I doubt it somehow.
Well, who's got what we say every time? Because last time I was on, we were saying this, and in fact, Keir Starmer crazily won Plank of the Week that week. Who'd have thought? But we all said, and everybody says, who would replace him? And I think that's the thing that's keeping him there. Who is it going to be? David Lammy?
Oh no! Please no! God no!
Angela Rayner?
Oh no!
You just go through the list like no. So yeah.
And his own party know that. I mean, it's really tragic that a party with a historically huge majority can't find anyone better than Keir Starmer, who is a proven liar. And Mike, don't apologise for calling them lies. They are lies. He's lied to Parliament. He's lied to his colleagues. He's lied to the country. There is no getting out of it. It's in black and white that he knew what he said he didn't know. He should not be there. We thought he was going to go a few weeks ago. There was a particular Monday where the Scottish Labour leader came out and said he should go, and then all the cabinet rallied round him. And they did that because they know, as well as all the rest of us, that none of the other candidates are any good at all. But they've also got skeletons in their closets, that Angela Rayner's got this tax thing hanging over her. Wes Streeting has got his relationship with Mandelson hanging over him. These are people who are not capable of replacing him, not only because they're useless and dangerous, but because they've got other murky issues going on. What we need is a general election, but turkeys won't vote for Christmas.
Yeah, well, I was going to your point about Anis Sarwar coming out and going against him, and he was vilified by a lot of the Labour stalwarts in even in Scotland for how dare you shouldn't do that.
Right.
But it's beginning to be proved that he was right to do so, because he's put some clear water between him, finally, and Keir Starmer, and it's actually beginning to reflect in the polls that they've actually, okay, it's marginal, they've risen another couple of points, where they're falling off a cliff, because every time Starmer opens his lying gob, Labour are suffering in Scotland. Anis is getting seen to be different. I like Anis and well-ish, but is he going to be any different is the problem. I don't think he's, even by saying no to Starmer, the Labour Party machine is run by Westminster, and they'll just have to toe the line, and people are seeing through that in Scotland. So,
also, again, they had their chance.
Fair play to them to have come out and say
but they had their chance. They're like Tories. They ran in Scotland for years and years and years and years, and until the SNP suddenly came along and had a kind of revisionist, approach, and they took over. But Labour for years ran some of the world's poorest constituencies and never did anything about it, never helped the people living there, just assumed they'd always vote Labour as soon as they were born, and took everyone for granted.
And that's why people went to the SNP.
To be honest. Anyway, there we are.
As with Wales, the old mining areas have been run into the ground by Labour, and they weigh the votes, they take them for granted. I once stood in Wales, and I was actually literally told, if you stuck a red rosette on a donkey, I would vote for it. But Reformer are seeing them for their money, I think, in many of those areas. And deservedly so. The Welsh deserve better governance, and so do the Scots, but they keep going for the SNP, so I can't help it.
Incredibly, in Scotland, what's been happening, there's a lot of people I talk to, they're saying, oh, I'm not telling anybody, but I'm going to vote Reform. And you're going, whoa, what? Yeah. Really? I mean, they are picking you. You're going to get, I think the May elections are going to be a seminal moment in Scottish politics. You're going to actually see that new party come through. Don't have many seats. But,
and of course, back to Keir Starmer, that could be the moment of reckoning when he does have to go.
Aye, right.
Finally.
Well, I don't think he will. Could be the final nail.
Think he will.
Well, hopefully somebody will push him out. Somebody with some balls and some brains will just go.
Put him on the HMS Dragon and push him over.
Take a long walk off a short pier. One of those. Right. Well, I don't want to make it Keir Starmer because it's too often that we make it Keir Starmer. But I think the best nominee this week is actually the Bank of England.
We're getting rid of Elon Musk. We must get a message to Elon Musk.
It's not Elon Musk's fault that you've been hacked.
No, but we've got to get a message to him, and that's as a publicity.
So he can shut us all down.
Did you know you were saying, Jasmine? That's the best. This thing, the Bank of England.
Again, we keep forgetting to put that there. There it is. No, you're not just going to come down here and win Plank of the Week.
Well, we've got.
It's very selfish, self-centered.
Of course, it's selfish. Wait till it happens to you, and you'll be out there.
What do you mean? Wait till it happens to me? How do you think I got here?
Well, that's right.
Thanks anyway.
That's brilliant.
So what do you guys?
Elon Musk.
What do you guys think? No, it was the other one, Zuckerberg. What do you guys think? Are you?
England or football, but then I can't imagine that football would win with other people.
No, I think the Bank of England definitely is a shoo-in because Winston Churchill, one of our finest historical figures, they want to replace him with a hedgehog. Because it's a bit less controversial because a hedgehog didn't cause the Bay of Bengal.
A bit prickly.
Starving. Very good. Yeah, exactly right. All right, well, listen, great to see you. Jasmine Birtles, thank you very much. Annunziata Rees-Mogg, beautiful to see you both. Donald Macleod of the Clan Macleod, he's still been hacked. And Elon Musk ain't winning it. But we can send a message to him. Elon, we just sort him out, otherwise they're going to shut up.
Help!
So anyway, here we go. Bank of England, Plank of the Week for this week. We'll see you next Friday.
Very good.